Good afternoon, everyone. It is 2 o'clock. Welcome to this workshop for the Temple City Council on February 17th, 2022. It's time for public comments. I see there are none. We'll move right into the work session. And item number 1 is to discuss if may be needed any regular meeting agenda items for today's meeting. It looks like Kathy has requested that we pull item 6O from the consent agenda, and Judge Persons will administer the oath of office to Ryan Matson following the council action. Everybody go figure out what 6O is.
Appointing the deputy city or the
And that will be our new.
canceled.
No, we're pulling it because Judge Persons is going to administer the oath.
He's gonna be there today, and so, since he was gonna be at the council meeting, Judge Person is gonna come over and swear him in, after. A brief introduction.
That's a new.
Yes.
Right.
We should not poor man, the only man.
The only male.
David feels over here.
The only male. Very lonely. I think he starts second. Anticipated start date is second.
Yeah, Kathy came to hers whenever she was hired. She came to that council meeting. Okay, council, so other than item O, is there anything else that needs to be pulled from the consent tonight? All right, we'll just pull item O. We're gonna change up the order that we're gonna go through the workshop agenda items. So we're gonna move to item number 4, which is to receive a project update regarding the mobility master plan. Mr. Deckman, you're up.
Good afternoon. Do I have a clicker?
It's right up there by.
Oh, yes, I got it hid under this paper.
All right.
I'll go down.
I just got called off my own project status.
Moving on to item.
So, as you know, I'm Jason Deckman, Richard Wilson and I are co-project managers, and we have Jory Dillard from Alliance Transportation Group is on the virtual platform. So we're going to give you a quick status update and then ask any questions you want to ask as we move into the final phases of this project. So we've been doing this for about a year now. We've laid a lot of track. We've got a lot of cars hooked up. It's now time to pull the train into the station because Temple's a railroad town, right? I had to make the metaphor. So we've wrapped up a lot of public engagement efforts. I've got a slide that we're going to talk about that. Thank you to everyone that came out to the public meeting at Wilson Park Center. This is a time for a shameless plug for the folks that work at there. They did a fantastic job getting us set up, hosting that event. They made us successful, which is the highest compliment that I can give. We've completed a comprehensive system assessment. We're doing scenario analysis, which is wrapping up this week. To, have an eye of what the future might look like, and then some recommendations of where we need to take this plan. So what have we heard in terms of public engagement, comments from staff, city, and different stakeholders? Not a lot of big surprises. Transit was a big one. A lot of folks see a need for expanded transit service and understand the challenges that go with providing that service. Numerous complaints about traffic. Adams and the interchange with Loop 363 was a big one at the public meeting, but that's come up other places. The interchange with I-35, that junction with all the traffic signals there, that's been certainly identified as a problem there. And either I'm clicking this thing out of nerves or it's overly sensitive. The needs, the one that I've got italicized there, the actionable plan. We've heard that from numerous people, and that's something that Richard and I want to have as well, is this isn't a plan that we do for the sake of making a plan and getting our names in the paper and then it goes on the shelf. This is a plan that's going to drive more work that we're going to be able to pull out and use in years to come. So public engagement. Some of y'all have heard me tell my sidewalk story, the interactive map, and how we got the Apache Drive project. If you look at that graphic, those are all the different comments that people drew onto our interactive map for the mobility master plan. I'm over the moon about that. That is so much great input that we're going to be able to use. It's one thing for us as planners and engineers and consultants to sit and look at the data and use our own common sense and professional judgment and determine where a sidewalk and turn lane or traffic signal needs to go. But when the people that live there are telling you this is what you need, it doesn't get better than that. That's how we're supposed to work. We're a responsive city. That's one of our strategic goals. So we're living the dream right there. And there's some numbers just on the top left of how many people came out, how many people took time out of their day to sit down and geek out about transportation planning. So that's just a great number and a lot of engagement that we got out of that. I'm going to skim through some of the slides from the comprehensive system assessment. You may or may not have seen some of these. One of the things we looked at was safety, and there's a reason I'm showing you two different graphics side by side. One is just the raw fatality count. The second one is speed-related crashes normalized against the traffic volume and the density. So it's one thing to know there's this many fatalities or this many crashes and know those raw numbers. Whether it's 8 or 1,660, that's worth knowing. But it's also worth comparing. Is there an area where there's a density, where there's a greater than average number of crashes of any particular type? Is it a hot spot, or is it a drop in the bucket of the overall traffic? If it's 8 accidents and there's 16 trips down that road a day, that's a problem. If there's 8 accidents and there's 16,000 trips down that road each day, maybe not as much of a problem. Maybe still something to look at, but not as drastically. So that's when we say it's a data-driven process. That's how we're looking at the data. And you can see on the speed-related crashes, Adams comes up, 31st Street comes up, Loop 363. You know, those high travel corridors, those are going to come up. And these are specifically speed-related crashes. We're able to pull the data from the state database. Speeding, distracted driving, DUI, failure to yield, you know, the types of movements that can usually be boiled down to someone's driving like a knucklehead.
Jason, on the right, has that been normalized by traffic volumes?
No, those are
these
heat map
aren't.
densities. Yeah. We do have a few other graphics in the about 110 page memo for the CSA that do show that the crashes normalize against the traffic volume.
Jason, the
Yes, ma'am.
word, sparse through dense, does that refer to the amount of traffic or the number or the type of accidents?
That's just the density of speed-related crashes.
Okay, so that does relate to the crashes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. This is specifically where there are more of those types of crashes at that location.
Because of speed.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah. When the police officer files and Chief can tell me what the name of the form is, but the crash report.
I got it.
There's a block where they code what was the primary cause or primary contributing factor. And some of those, I've spent time looking at those. You get a primary, sometimes a second or third, and then there's a narrative or a diagram. Some of that can be very enlightening reading. And it kind of ties into what I've got on the next slide, is that, you know, the primary cause was speed, okay? But you read the narrative and maybe the speed isn't the only thing that was going on if there's some type of trend analysis. And I'm going to use that to point towards the graphic on the right. Those are active transportation crashes. The big darker red dots are the fatalities.
Mm-hmm.
So those are pedestrians and bicyclists that were involved in an accident. That's not to say that it was a motorist who struck the pedestrian and it was the motorist's fault. you read some of these narratives, a lot of times it's the pedestrian drunk on their phone, or it's at night and they're wearing dark clothing and they step out into traffic and bad things happen. Driver couldn't react in time. Were they struck by the car? Were they killed by the car? Yes. Was it the driver's fault? Not always. So a lot of these, we could look at the locations where there's active crashes, but when it comes down to doing the engineering and figuring out, what's the project? What's the solution here? Is it lighting? Is it traffic signals? Is it a bike lane? We need a bigger sidewalk? We need a sidewalk, period. That's when we start digging into the data and trying to figure out what the actual trend, what's the pattern that we're trying to solve before we just go in and lay concrete. On the left is the level of stress. So that was analysis just to give us an idea of where people were going to be more likely to take non-vehicle trips, bicycles or walking. You see it down here on Adams Central a good bit is, people with the assisted mobility scooters. So this was more of a data-driven process to determine, is it a high-speed road or is it more of a local street, 25, 30 miles an hour? Are there sidewalks or bike lanes there, first of all? If they're not, are people going to be comfortable walking in the street? Maybe down through their neighborhood they would be. Maybe once you get on Adams or 31st Street, no, they're not going to be comfortable walking in the street for good reason. Part of that level of stress is also understood that it's a very subjective thing. They call them the road warriors, the cyclists with the helmets and the Lycra and the reflective $2,000 bicycles. They're going to ride anything, anywhere at any time. Probably not as scared as they should be, versus kid on bike, maybe still has training wheels. Maybe it's someone who's, needs something a little bit of an assist to get around, whether that's a walker or a scooter. They're going to be less comfortable walking down the grassy area on the side of the road where there's no sidewalk, where you see the beaten path, but they're going to be more likely to trip and fall. Their level of comfort using that street as a pedestrian path is different. So when we look at the level of stress, that's a starting point. But we understand that there's different types of users, different risk perceptions. The other thing that this could give us is some indications where, maybe there's an ability to connect a couple neighborhoods where you see just some shorter chunks of red, but a lot of green around it. Avenue H with the overpass there being a good example. There may be an option. There's a high stress link at that bridge, but there may be a way to decrease that stress, provide some connectivity between the neighborhoods there. So that's the other thing that we'll use coming out of that analysis. So that was the comprehensive system assessment, otherwise called the CSA. The work that we're wrapping up now is we've got 6 scenarios. So the first 3 were done through travel demand traffic models. The first one just simply said, what if we fix the traffic signals? What if we optimize the timing? What are the gains to be had there? We've got a slide that'll show you what could be done. Once we've optimized the traffic signals, okay, what can we do to the roadway? Does it need another lane? Does it need a continuous turn lane? How can we improve the traffic on the road segments? Then we widened the lens and looked a little bit more region-wide, things like the outer loop, east and west, loop 363, up Airport Road. How does Temple connect to the rest of the region? The last 3, we started looking a little bit more conceptually, less data-driven. And scenario 4 was added, it was selected because of the public input we heard from a lot of the stakeholder meetings and the earlier public meetings, the need for transit. So let's look at the routes we have now. Let's see if we can figure out how they're functioning, where there's areas to be gained. Is there different methods of providing transit? One of the scenarios, and this technical memo will be coming out probably end of this week, next week, and I may put Jory on the spot. in terms of when that's going to come to us, one of the things we're looking at is the concept of what they call micro-mobility or micro-transit. Instead of having your traditional fixed route buses, the transit company has vans that are available on call that will connect people to that fixed route. So they call similar to like an Uber or a Lyft using an app. That driver picks them up. It may pick up a couple other folks depending on the demand, connect them with the fixed route, and then they make their trip the rest of the way. So they're looking at how that might work, where there's areas in Temple where the employment or population density would make that option make sense. It may not be a good fit everywhere, but we can look at, is there a recommendation? Is there, maybe a direction that we want to go with that option? And ultimately it comes down to, this is a what if scenario. It really goes back to Hill Country Transit District and the money that's being spent there. Before we made any major paradigm changes, there'd have to be a bigger picture discussion of funding and partnership and how that works. The active transportation improvements, again, looked at that level of stress, the needs, looking at the comments from the interactive map. Where do people need bike lanes, sidewalks, or off-street trails like Georgetown Railroad Trail or Friars Creek Trail, Pepper Creek? What can we connect people with using trails instead of their only option is getting in a car and driving down the road? The last one is high-level policy, best practices. We know things like self-driving cars and networked vehicles where the vehicles are talking to the traffic signals, all this smart technology. We know it's coming. So this would be some recommendations, for policies, pitfalls to avoid, what that could look like. So that'll be the last scenario, is the real future. So I said I had a slide showing the signal optimization. So they started with, in the morning and evening, 45 and 55, and we had, for the record, something in them 72 or 73, I think is what Kenny said, traffic signals in the city, that 45 of them were below the desired level of service. They were failing or nearly so. Based on the model is what it is. It's a simulation, it's a computer. That if we were able to optimize all those signals and get them functioning as best they possibly can, then we would be able to cut about 15. So about a third of the ones that are failing now would come out of that failing status. Even more so in the afternoon. So there are gains to be made just from looking at signal timing. Now, I will say,
is that what you're calling failing? Just maybe not optimal timing?
they look at it different levels of service, look at the minutes and hours of delay. If there's congestion that seems to back up because of the timing, whether it's turn lanes that aren't there, so the people are being stacked by one person trying to turn left. You get away from maybe the signal optimization into more planning level, engineering level recommendations. Now we're going to add turn lanes, but can we optimize that just based on timing?
They're similar to academic grades, so it's A through F, and D and below considered failing.
Wow.
It does not mean that the lights aren't working.
No, I understand.
They have a risk.
What does it take to get
Lights are on, but
above that level?
Sometimes it's there are situations that exist where it may not be possible just because of the volume of traffic and whatnot, because it is a factor of so many different things that there are some instances you may not be able to do much better. But there are a lot, like Jason's showing, where we're able to make improvements just by the timing there.
Where, it becomes very much this three-dimensional thing you try to envision. You could optimize all the traffic going westbound on Adams. You could sequence those lights. People coming the other way are screwed, to use a technical term. So that optimization is going to be a balancing act.
Jason, what does it mean? you used a word, not below desired level of service, but you said something else that sounded more strongly that they weren't working or non-functional or some such word. What failure?
Yeah, I think it's failing. That was
Well,
the,
what
one of the
does
terms.
that mean failing? I mean, is it technical fuses are out or, I mean, why are they failing?
No, it's just that they're below the standard. We want them to be
okay.
above that D level of service. And if they're
Okay.
D, E, or F, then they're marked as failing. And then they went back in the simulation, looked at all the signals that were marked as failing and said, okay, if we optimize those,
Okay.
what are the gains to be had?
And some of the failures, as you're saying, there's just nothing to be done about.
It could be beyond just the signal, maybe a lane, a size of the roadway.
Right,
There's
can't
just,
put another lane
Yeah.
in, et cetera.
there's 4 directions, so
Right.
you've got to balance all 4 directions.
And
Okay,
if you have lights that are closer together, then, you know, they really should be, like, if you think about
Mhm.
31st Street,
right,
in front of the hospital and crossing over the loop to, you know, the mall,
Right.
there's, the signals are physically so close that there's limits to how
Mhm.
optimized those signals can be, because
Right.
there's not the space, based on the traffic volume and the speeds, there's
right.
not enough physical
get it.
space between them to truly, on a model,
Yeah.
optimize. So the model has its limitations, because it's like, you know, best case scenario, if you don't have some of the, you know, on the ground
Right,
things
if
that
you're
you have to
building
consider.
from scratch. as
Mhm.
opposed
Right,
to
if you were doing
retrofitting.
a Sim City, maybe.
How many total lights did you say are in the system? 70 something?
72. And if someone knows the correct answer, but Kenny and I were on a call with Kinley Horn 2 weeks ago. And if I remember from my notes, that was the number he threw out.
There used to be 60 something, so that sounds reasonable.
And we are adding more. He mentioned during that call that we got the warrant for a signal at Poison Oak and 317. I don't know when that's coming, but the number of signals as we lay new roads, as population increases, as the traffic meets the conditions that TxDOT deems when a signal is needed, then that number is going to go up.
So if it's on the TxDOT road, it's still ours.
We still control those.
And how much does the signal cost?
That I do
200
not know.
and something thousand.
It depends on how wide the intersection is, you know, how many arrows, but just say, I would say around 300,000 to, I mean, some of them,
2 to 3, yeah.
there's been some that have like really, I'm thinking of, I think one on maybe Canyon Creek that had to have such a big arm just because of the layout, that it was higher than you expected. The more lanes you have and things like that, but just in general, 200, 300.
Okay. And I don't think I heard you say how often do those have to be replaced?
Replaced, like,
Does it just go out?
We typically don't just replace the whole thing unless somebody runs over. A lot of times people run over them and then they're knocked down and we just have to replace the whole thing then. But typically it's a maintenance cycle where you may replace a cabinet, you'll replace some of the heads, and then you may replace, you know, pieces at a time, but not necessarily the entire signal at once.
Do y'all have a scheduled maintenance?
Yes, yes.
So we do about 137 maintenance, but actually with the higher order, it's about 140 something maintenance visits to our traffic signals per month. So yeah, there's a very routine. So we hit them about twice a month with just basically going out there and just checking everything, you know, making sure it's okay. And then there's a much less frequent schedule for us to go and do some more in-depth assessment, timing and all that.
Any other questions on traffic signals? We also looked at congestion. That was something that folks talked about. So this one, the metric is delay. So level of service, as David mentioned, it's a school grade. It's A through F. A is free flowing traffic. No stopping, no slowing down, nobody's in your way.
I like that.
All through the day, 24 hours a day. Level service F is Houston at 7:30 in the morning. You are stuck, sitting, and you're not moving for extended periods of time. So level of service F is far over the roadway capacity. The problem with level of service is that sometimes if the goal is level of service A, that to me is unrealistic. We want a certain amount of traffic. If we're at level of service A all the time, that means nobody's going to work, nobody's making deliveries, kids aren't going to school, people aren't going to the store, shop, and spend money. Level service A is not always a great thing. So a different way that they look at it is delay. If you figure out what's your average commute, for me, it's about 20 minutes. That's perfect world conditions, not breaking any speed limits, hitting every green light getting here. I can make it just about 20, 22 minutes. Average is closer to 28, maybe 30. Because I'm going to hit a red light. I'm going to get caught behind a train. There's going to be a car accident or a fire engine, and I have to pull over and wait for them to pass. So there's going to be something that delays me getting here. So we start to look at the amount of delay for your trips. Part of which you look at with delay is also the reliability. If your average is 28, but on the day that you do get slowed down, maybe it's 30 or 31 minutes. Okay, there's a little delay, but it's not much and it's still very manageable. But there's been times when I've come across I-14 and there's a major accident. And either I'm stuck and it takes me 45 minutes or an hour to get to work, or I have to get off the detour and saying, now my delay is very random, unexpected, and extreme. So that's when if you hear people talk about reliability in transportation congestion management, the reliability is the measure of how much variation in those delay numbers you get. The takeaway from this slide is that, again, from the model, if we apply the signal timing and we work on some intersection improvements. So besides the timing, planning level improvements like add a turn lane, add a protected left, whatever that may be, what are the gains? Then theoretically we could get, we could reduce delay by 46% in the morning. So how do we get that? That gets us into the project selection and the engineering solutions. Well, first we got to figure out, where's the need? Where's the intersections? Where's the road segments? Where there's the most congestion, most delay? Then we can work with the engineers and figure out how to improve that. So our next steps, like I said, Alliance is wrapping up the technical memorandum. KPA's helped them a lot with the modeling and the analysis. We're moving into writing the draft plan. So we're going to start working on the chapters. There's going to be chapters for, the overall demographics, where we think we're growing. Where's the density of employment versus density of population? Because that's going to tell you where your traffic's being produced and where it's being generated and attracted to. Work through all those revisions, and we're going to come back and see you guys in May for a public hearing and planned adoption. The public comment period did close February 11th. We do have one more stakeholder meeting. We're meeting with Temple Chamber next week. We met with TABA yesterday. And what I told them, and I'll keep saying, and some of y'all came to the public hearing and heard me say this too, is that at the end of this project, the consultants go back to Austin. But we're still here. Richard and I are still here. Don and his crew. Anybody that thinks about transportation planning, we're still here. So the public comment period may be done, but the listening period is still open. And if you want to bend our ears, there's Richard's name and phone number right there, Richard Wilson, and mine as well. And most of y'all know how to get a hold.
We all know who the transportation expert is.
So that being said, any questions?
Jason, are there any budgety themes that are emerging at this point?
Not at this point. Now, what I would say to that is what we've been doing, what we're going to keep doing, is not just prioritize the project. This is the right project right now, and that's where we spend $100 million, whatever it is. It's marry up the project and the need with funding sources. And I think we've done that well with the TxDOT grants for the safety fund. That's how we got money for Apache. Go after MPO money very strategically. Find ways to grab some money to be more competitive make our other city funding RZ or CIP projects, maybe there's a project that is destined to be an RZ project. We don't expend any energy trying to force that into the MPO. square peg into a round hole. So I would say our budgetary things, we just need to be strategic about which project we start steering towards which funding source early on.
We have though asked about in this first flush of documentary projects, identify any that are the low hanging fruit that we can take care of quickly.
Yeah.
And
I'm
maybe
curious
the next
about-
budget cycle.
I'm curious about operating budgets too.
Yeah.
Just the capital.
And we had a real good conversation with David, Tracy, about, one of the visions, goals, and one of our objective statements. What's the right way? What's the right amount of city budget that needs to be gone towards transportation? Well, is that maintenance or is that building new stuff? How much of that money is spent on planning and analysis? Either we do it in-house or we hire a consultant. That's an ongoing conversation that we're having. And Tracy, what was your phrase about maximizing the revenue and minimizing the impact to the ratepayers?
No, it was to stabilize and minimize the tax rate impact on CIP funding.
That's what it was. Thank you. Yes, in terms of spending money, I'll just look at the end of the table. I'll spend as much as Tracy lets me.
Well, I heard Tava was very interested in more roundabouts.
That was an
Perhaps
interesting
doing a
one.
Study on next to the high school and see if there've been any accidents or,
Right.
how people are functioning around there.
I don't know that we have any data yet because it just opened, but I'm real curious to see it. The interesting thing, and I've heard it both here, Belton, where I grew up in New York State, is when someone builds a roundabout, the first thing that you hear is, that's the dumbest idea ever. They'll never work in fill in the blank. We don't need roundabouts here because we're not London and we're not Germany. Then you build the roundabout and everybody's like, I don't know how to drive in a roundabout. Whoever thought of this as a fill in the blank? And then they get used to that and they realize that the traffic just flows. And you didn't have to spend $300,000 for a signal. You maybe spend $300,000 on the pavement, but that signal has to be networked. The pavement doesn't have to be networked. You just build it. It does it on its own. And the traffic flows.
Just anecdotally, I've driven through that roundabout a couple of times. Up during school time, just intentionally the stacking is about half of what it was prior. Everybody's, to your point, everybody's moving. They're moving slowly, but that's better than starting and stopping. That's still faster.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now I've noticed a difference, depending on which way I come in. If I come off 35 and then come down Central, there used to be a real problem with people that would come up the end of that turn lane and stop dead and wait for 4 lanes of traffic to clear and then go diagonally across so they can make a left turn up 31st. I don't see that as much anymore. So not only is that traffic impacting high school traffic, it's benefiting others as well,
Makes sense.
which is brilliant. So, it's always great to get good feedback. Because I'm glad you guys put that in because we get a lot of, how come you did it this way? Types of comments. And I had a couple of guys at the public meeting that as soon as we finished
Yeah, you
speaking, he
did.
grabbed me. You saw that. He gave it to me with both barrels.
I really commend you. You were able to keep your cool. Something to
Neutrophil.
be seen, yes.
Jason, some places may love roundabouts, but when I worked in planning in Boston, the number 2 traffic complaint was a roundabout in Cambridge, Boston and Cambridge connecting. It was the number 2 most hated and it had been there forever and it's still there.
Right.
Traffic planners just ignored everybody complaining about it. And I don't know why that town hated it or those towns hated it as much when other places seemed to make it work. I have no earthly idea.
There is an upper limit of traffic volume that you can force through a roundabout.
That may have been because it's so congested in that area.
Right. What a roundabout does, one of the things it does, it takes away the conflict. So if you've got a traditional 4-way, you're making a left, you're having to cross that traffic, there's places where you could impact. With a roundabout, you don't have those crossing, you might glance off somebody. You might get rear-ended, but there's only really 4 points, depending on how many entrances there are at the roundabout. There's only a very limited number of points where you could have an impact. Where that goes away, you increase the roundabout size, and you had an extra lane for the roundabout, you're right back to where you were, and you're asking folks to navigate a roundabout and all that traffic while moving.
That's why that
So
fun
that's-
song about getting on the
yeah.
roundabout and never ever getting off. You're there for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Big Ben, Parliament. Yeah. There's a sweet spot for roundabouts. I haven't heard anything from Jory. Either he's muted or I'm just doing that good of a job.
No, Jason, excellent job. I just wanted to confirm that we are, the scenario technical memorandum is going through our quality control process this week with a delivery for tomorrow. So you were correct on that. Really don't have any additional comments. That wraps it up. We're really excited to be working on this. And this is the really exciting part because we're getting into the recommendations as well as the implementation plan and updates to the capital improvement plan. So lots to be doing and very busy, and just really thankful to be working on this project with everybody.
Thank you, sir.
And Tracy's latest and greatest update is we have 79 traffic signals.
There you go.
Actually, in our annual report.
We're about to breach 8.
All right.
Thank you, Jason.
No questions, and thank y'all.
Like Jessica said, you're always a brave man. Going to those.
Once more to the breach here, friends. Who needs the clicker now?
They're like, I talked to him on Friday and this is Wednesday. There's still nothing done here.
We're gonna build a bridge.
I know. Okay, we will go ahead and take item number 1 next, which is to, assuming everyone's ready, which is to receive a presentation from Bobby Airy, Executive Director of Citizens for Progress regarding the Housing Improvement Program. Are we ready for that?
Glad I came early.
Need help passing anything out?
No. I apologize, I'm trying to do paperless. Keep my notes on my phone. So, good afternoon, my name is Bobby Eric. Oh, wait. This ain't a bribe, so don't put it on the record. There's some kid posture that counts as a pass around.
You take bribe.
Hey, I will prefer more deny any bribery. So, my name is Bobby Eric. I am the Executive Director for CFP Citizens for Progress. I apologize if some of you I talked to on the phone or Zoom and I really don't know your faces. Because that's kind of the world we're living in right now. So I was asked just to kind of tell you a little bit about what we're doing and how things are going with the home repair program. As one of the subcontractors for the city, you know, my goal is to provide the best customer service as possible and also to do as much as we can to improve the lives of the folks that we're serving. So I just kind of want to show you some pictures and explain things to you. These are the kind of homes that we're dealing with. Again, obviously they're low income. A lot of the homes have existed from the 50s and 60s and 70s, generally speaking. As you can see, these are very common issues in the community with these homes. A lot of rot, whether it's the roofs or the foundations, which you'll see next. You can see like on this home, it leans. And again, some of these designs, if you've traveled around, some to me represent homes, little things that we call in San Antonio casitas on the south side, where my dad taught me that apparently Sears Roebuck used to order them out of a catalog.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that, where you could pick the color, the size, a couple add-ons, and it gets delivered on a flatbed truck to your lot. So some of those are those fashion. The other ones are kind of like the shotgun homes in New Orleans, if you've been there. It's one of my favorite towns, so it kind of reminds me of all those. So this is an example of the after effects of just a simple roof repair, right? And this is a fairly big house compared to most that we do. But as you can see, just aesthetically, it changes the entire culture of that block, right? And the home itself, I mean, it's a dramatic effect, but you can see that it literally just changes the way the blocks do look as you drive by. Another roof here on a very small home. And again, it has unique curves and stuff, which was really nice. The home itself, again, in very good shape. But a roof on average, if we weren't doing these projects, would probably be, well, current market and lumber just went up last week, about $20,000 for a small roof because lumber is right now doubled in price in 7 days. So, we were able to do this one for, I believe, $5,400. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call you out.
I saw one of them.
So we do a lot of bathroom things because, again, a lot of the water tends to be seeping out. We have a lot of old pipes and things like that. So this, I wanted to kind of show you the before and after. If you look at this, the walls are falling off, coming out. There's a window there that has a lot of intrusion of water that's leaking through. You can see that in there that the floor and the walls don't connect, as well as the piping had to be done. That's the after effects of it. And that was only, I believe that was like $5,000.
The wall that was coming out is which wall in here? It's that wall, okay.
Yeah. So what we do is shore it up from the outside to keep the water from coming into the house and causing more damage to the walls. And then in this situation, instead of trying to rebuild walls and everything, they did a drop-in shower, which came out 30% less than, again, the lumber for the design. But as you can see, I kind of put some information as far as our clients. Mr. J here happened to be a post-Vietnam era veteran too. He was not eligible for VA benefits, but after him and I had a conversation, he's actually now applying for his VA disability. So that's kind of an added benefit of doing these projects and getting to know the clients and being able to serve them. He's living on basic Social Security money. And again, as you can see, word of mouth is still the most common way for these folks finding out about these projects. So Nancy and her department, paper the town a lot in different areas. And that's the most easy way for folks to actually hear about the program. Some do hear about it from the website and things like that, but generally it's a lot of times word of mouth referrals. And you can see from his statement, the difference that it made. He had said that his bathroom was like that for the last 12 years. And he lives alone. He has no family to support him either. But he was so proud to show it off. He has to be good in the picture.
Holes and bugs.
So this is one of the larger homes that we did. As you can see, it's hard to see the pitch, but basically we graded all this off to ensure that the water drainage came away from the home. It didn't need a lot of other things other than the roof and that, but you can see, it has good bones, it's solid. But once it was done, literally a simple fix, changed, again, the entire aesthetics of that corner lot and the neighborhood that it's in. It's a few blocks from downtown, actually. Water heaters and HVAC systems, something that everybody asks for. Most of the time we'll walk in, if they have them, some of them don't have it at all. We'll walk in, the water heater generally is just about 20 years past its life. I'm sorry. The HVAC systems too, one of the clients, we had, Nancy had said, ask them what the most important thing is. And she wanted to have heat and air. So that was the first thing that we took care of in dealing with those issues. Again, some of them, we just can't afford to do all the repairs that are necessary. So we prioritize what the client's needs, as well as looking at structurally what is going to make sure on health and safety standards that house is going to maintain. But a lot of times we do a lot of HVACs and a lot of water heaters and plumbing. So this is another home. You can see the roof is brand new, and you can really compare and contrast, like just the siding and how it looks. I actually couldn't find the other pictures, but we actually did a service project on this too. And because the person was mildly disabled, we renovated and did this entire porch over. So we had volunteer youth from outside the community come and do projects. And this was one of the project homes that we also worked on too, as well as the roof.
So disability access rather than stairs, in other words.
Yeah, so she would come in because in front, she was fearful sometimes at night. And she would sit out here a lot, or want to sit out here a lot too, because she doesn't go out much. So we made sure it was shored up and it was actually level with the door, because there was a giant drop on it. Yeah, and made sure that she could walk up and down the stairs. So we made it a longer run of the stairs, so they weren't as pitched. Yeah.
Is that a pear tree?
That stuff I don't know. Does anybody? It's a fruit tree of some kind, but So again, you can see this is the plumbing that we tend to get involved with. You can see it's not even hooked up. She hadn't had running water in her kitchen in about 2 years. She just couldn't afford it. She was on her own. Husband died a long time ago. Family's poor. Very simple repairs. Fixed the sink, got her a new faucet, and just put in some PVC. And I mean, it made a big difference in her life. Electrical on the right was the before. And that was literally sitting by the front door with a little awning. That's what they're living with, services that are either like 40 or 60 amps, which is like half of what we all have in our home. And that's very common too, because again, many of the homes were built in the same generation where that's all they put in. We even had one home where you could tell that they had to add everything because the home was built in the Depression when there was no utilities. But this is basically the entire service being replaced. Another example, freight lines coming straight off of the power supply, and then just again shoring it up and then putting in standard utilities so that they don't have one of those homes where you have to plug something in and out of different parts of the house just to keep things running. So this one, and I apologize because this is PDF. So the day before Thanksgiving, I get this text message, and we had just finished up about 7 jobs. It's this video of this gentleman sending me a video saying he now has gas and power. So for him, he had not had gas utilities connected or water running for 15 months because the house had broke with the original freeze several years ago. And he was on disability. His mother had died, some other mental health issues. He just couldn't afford to do it, found out about us. And we got him the ability to cook it himself at Thanksgiving dinner. And that's what he was most proud of. So he sent that. And as you can see, you know, again, just samples of how we do this, a lot of trenching, but you can see the gas lines coming straight from the main. With all that freeze, people's lines just started cracking. A lot of these homes were like that.
Now I got fire. Look at that. Now I'm gonna go turn on the water heater.
The water heater part. All right. One of the other things that we did is buy some space heaters. So we do have some people on the HEART program. And unfortunately, you know, we're not trying to waste money on a home that's going to be replaced. But we want to make sure with all the cold weather that they were safe. So we provided 8 heaters this year. It may not seem like a lot, but for the folks that got them, it was the only heat source they had to stay warm and not die in the freeze. I can tell you from my experience in San Antonio, we started a program with 20 heaters called it Warm Hearts, Warm Homes. We were up to 188 a year because of the number of homes that just don't have the proper utilities or don't have an HVAC system to keep themselves warm and things. So it's something that is in high demand in the poor and the low-income communities.
Those heaters,
Yes,
they
ma'am.
still are electric though.
These are electric, but what we do is these heaters will work even on homes with low, I would call it low wattage.
Okay, but if the
Yeah.
power goes out,
Power goes out, they're still stuck.
They're
Yeah,
stuck.
yeah.
Got it.
And the benefit of this too is they move it around. So it's an oil
Yes,
filled
yes,
radiator, and I apologize if everybody hears that accent, but I'm from Philadelphia. So radiators, right? We use them up there. They're in all the homes and cities. Usually they're steam, but we got these, they're oil filled. So once they heat up, they'll stay hot for an hour before they cool down. So what we do is give them good electric cords, and they can move them around room to room so that they individually can take care of themselves, and their heating bill doesn't go up. So it's a benefit. Plus they have the safety features we all want. And then I wanted to kind of share with you real quick the stats, just to give you an understanding. And again, I've only been here, I think we're going on 7 months now. So number of clients served today by CFP on the home repair program is 29. Number of projects, and that means like individual jobs, whether it's a house that has 3 jobs or not, is a total of 53. We've completed 42 in 6 months. So we have 11 going literally this week. So you can see that the program is successful. It's providing a significant health and safety benefit, but it's literally changing lives of folks every day and every week that we're operating. Any questions on that?
Can you just give, because I think this is the first time you've had the opportunity to visit to the council as a whole. Can you just give just a short biography, just background on you, just that you're the new executive director for Citizens for Progress and.
I'm the new executive director for CFD. So a little bit about me. I'm a 17-year Army vet. I signed up when I was 17. I knew what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I did it as long as I could. I was injured in Iraq in 2006 after my third tour, and that kind of ended my military service. 2008, I was medically retired, but because of my injuries, took about 5.5 years of recovery. As you can see, I'm not this sexy on a normal day, so it is burnt scar all over. But one of the things that I retired was known as a first sergeant. So basically, it's an executive position in the military. And I just kept on getting calls for people trying to figure out, what do I do with this? How do I go find this? Because when you get out of the military, life is not a bowl full of cherries. You know, it's really hard and challenging. So I spent a lot of time doing advocacy, fell into the nonprofit world. And for the last 17 years or so, I've been working nonprofits throughout Texas and New Mexico, working with building affordable housing, doing programs to help the homeless and the poor. And again, other places and programs like the home repair program or the utilities and the heaters and things like that. Just trying to solve things that people have a tendency to get stuck in these silos and not look around what's to their left and right. And I sit on several boards and committees and things like that. One of them that I sit on for the state, we get a lot of presentations for grants, and we noticed that there were a lot of challenges in Central Texas as a whole. And when I say central, it's generally that 7-county cog region of this area. And I was kind of aware of Temple before, and I knew about Fort Hood. And one of my friends had told me that Nancy was trying to hustle somebody to get up here. So, I came up here and had a conversation. But for me, it's really like fulfilling my passion and my dream to help people, whether they're veterans or not, and improving the community. And I think as far as communities, and I tell this to Nancy all the time, she thinks I'm lying to her. The city of Temple as a government and as a town and community, I have to say that all the places I've worked with and for throughout the state, this is probably the one that's kind of more progressive. And actually, you can talk to people without getting into a fight. Right? Where people can agree to disagree. You don't bring in your prejudices or feelings into anything. People actually have a conversation, discussion about what works. How can we spend the money effectively? What can we do to actually solve this or that problem? And I have to say that I do appreciate that as an individual, but also, as a constituent now working in the community. And I just kind of wanted to put that out there too. Hopefully that works for you. Okay. The other thing I was asked to update you on was the East Temple Enrichment Center.
Oh, wait, before you go.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Before you change topic, who are you? Who is your construction crew? Where do you get them?
Okay, so contractors. God bless them. Is there any contractors in here? I won't count the lumber company.
So in other words, you send
My job is to act like a site foreman.
Okay.
Find the labor, get the people to do the jobs, make sure they're done right, set up the inspections, and work with the client too, being the leadership. My intent was to do exactly what was in the grant, like keep it local. My challenge was, and if any of you can help me on this, I appreciate it. I spent 3 months trying to keep it local, all throughout Temple, and I just kept on making rings of 5 miles and 5 miles. My challenge was finding contractors that were willing to do these tough but small jobs.
Sure.
Right? A lot of the contractors here are in big business, doing big projects, and the challenge is convincing them that, look, this is kind of one of those feel-good things. You won't make a lot of money, but it really changes, the community. It changes the impact of what is done. And, for me, so I find some in Temple, but the majority of them I find are smaller companies of 10 or less, maybe coming out of Waco. A lot of young guys and gals working in the construction and trades fields that understand and see the value of being able to help do a job, not make as much money as you would, let's say, on a Walmart, but that you could go in and really, improve a community by doing those jobs. So the majority, I would say, come from the Waco area, between here and Waco. Small, maybe 20% come from that.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions on that one? Okay, so I was asked also to talk about the East Temple Enrichment Center, which again, I'd like to thank everybody for being committed to the project. So I could tell you, our goal was to stay within the original funding costs, but as the city manager knows too, and everybody involved, that kind of went out the roof as prices started going up. I believe overall, the project almost doubled in price for the same footprint.
Oh.
So, the challenge was can we still get what we need and still maximize the value of the funds used? So right now, I've submitted a proposal to the feds for additional funding of about $700,000, which would still take your original approved designs and renderings and ideas and objectives and build that. If we don't get that, we have what we're calling a 50% markup, which basically just takes it from a 2,200 square foot to about a 1,700 square foot campus to provide the same services and the same resources that the original intent of the program was. Did I hit them?
You did.
Okay,
Good
good.
job.
Are there any questions on it? I
Hear
can't.
back from the feds.
So the Fed's grant cycle for that money closes March 22nd. So we should find out a pretty immediate response, or at least they give us a call because I got somebody actually answer the phone from a federal office, which was amazing. He's out of Austin. But we kind of have to like indirectly pitch it and see if it's of interest, which they're very excited because they saw a city government like invested in this project. So we're guessing probably by the end of April that we would have some type of decision. And then if not, we just continue to move forward with a modified plan that's already completed. So the delays won't be any more delays than what we already have.
Can our legislative people, Carter's office, help that?
Usually they have some rules around what they call phone marking, and kind of trying to advocate or get involved in the agency work. But certainly, it certainly wouldn't, if we had not let Congressman Carter's office know about the request, we should.
Yes.
It certainly wouldn't hurt for them to know about it.
I mean, if I indirectly get a phone call from a congressman's office and he asks me for a drink, I'm happy to go not tell you. So, so aside from all the work I do, I also do a lot of advocacy. I've gotten 11 bills passed in the state in the last 10 years for veterans. So I kind of know how to tap dance around the politics of it if I have to. But my phone number is on the information, so you can give it out. Sir.
Is there any place in the construction aspect for the building trades program at Temple High School?
So we've been talking about that. And what we do for these projects, I don't think so. Because these are kind of like those fast, we need them now kind of things. And the ability to teach a student at the same time as doing it just takes too long. But we have already talked about doing that as far as the enrichment campus, and as well as trying to bring those same training skills to the people who are low income and also maybe underemployed. Because as I'm sure many of you know better than I do, the next 20 years of the trades industry is hurting already. Even with the struggle of the economy and, hiring practices and things, people in the trades are just becoming non-existent. This current generation, which again, I have kids in, but I'd like to throw them out. It's just not working. And what we're going to try and do is also encourage that, though. We're going to work with Temple College and the school and see what we could do to maybe do some classes at the Enrichment Center that kind of are the same they do at the school. And maybe some of the kids don't go there. I don't know. But, try and tap into that marketability of folks who already feel downtrodden, that we can lift them up by showing them, what can you do to a house and how can you improve the community so that they can see these kind of projects too.
You've had that conversation with the Temple School District?
I haven't had it with the
About
school
using
district
it?
yet. We started with the college. The school district is next. So with all the weather and things, the focus was trying to get these done. But for the next 90 days, it will be the relationships that are necessary to provide the skills and the training and the education in the Enrichment Center that we will set up, because we're now on I will call it a hard target of whether we get the money or not from the feds. We'll still continue on with the project.
You're doing great work.
Thank you.
It looks like a number of the people that you're serving are obviously older and alone. What about security? Bringing contractors in that, you don't know a lot about. Are we trying to look at that?
So I'm a retired Army first sergeant. If you don't know the military, I'm the guy
I
they
do.
call on when they basically want people to get a hammer put down on them.
Right.
I do the same thing on you.
Okay.
So I would not send any contractor to a home, number one, that I didn't already check out.
Okay, that was my question.
And then also, I always make sure that the client knows who's coming,
Okay.
right? So that it's not just out of the blue and they think, there's some fly-by-night driving by. So I do put a lot of like safety.
Good, we're
and
thinking
concerns
about
in.
that. That was my
Yes,
main
ma'am.
question. Thank you.
Mhm.
What was the original budget for the enrichment center?
The original budget,
675, I want to say.
How much?
675,000, if memory serves.
ish. And I'm asking for just under 700K from the feds.
How are we
Different,
gonna
yeah.
serve the same things by going from, if we have to going from 2,200 square feet to 1,700 or whatever the numbers were you gave?
So again, I think it's really a concept of understanding what you're gonna do in the place.
Okay,
All right, the extra space, let's say the comparison between this room that holds, let's say the capacity is 25 to the next conference room or council meeting room that holds 40. Think of it in that capacity. We may not be able to do 40 people all the time anymore, but we can still do 25 people. So that's kind of the same thing. And again, the same concepts they use in the military. Sometimes you gotta do more with less. You just gotta figure out what you have. So I think we have a good plan in place. And again, the design really hasn't changed much from the original. Other, maybe carrying out some of the bells and whistles that are good to have in a new building
okay.
versus, what we can afford to have in a COVID market.
Are there things that we can add on at a later point?
Yes, so some of the designs have taken that into account. For example, there's an unimproved area on the outside that, and again, I didn't know truck construction this detail, but even whether it's improved or unimproved, it costs the same price per square foot. So we have made it basically an unimproved area. We also have expansion area on the sides that's basically landscape right now.
Okay.
So if we need to put more, we can put more in the area too. And then we're also trying to work something with this small sliver over next to it to see if we could do something at the church and our campus at the same time. So there's plenty of opportunity for expansion.
And I did verify 750,000. That was the original.
Other questions?
Welcome.
That was easy.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's great.
thank you so
Son, thank you.
much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Not officially, but I won't take anybody out for a drink.
I would only take an unofficial.
All right, very good. Thank you, Bobby. You go by Bob, Bobby?
Whatever you want to call me, sir, I answer.
Can I just say something, Mayor?
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
glad to be here and we're glad to have Bobby because it helped us raise the bar. First, now backtrack. We're glad to have the opportunity to have Spirit to be considered head of integrity for our city manager and others for you all to embrace us and let us have a home and to go to a building that we thought we could live in just as it is, just change that embalming room, but it didn't work. So we've gotten over the disappointment of that and embrace the newness. But if we could do this, if it had not been for the city. And so you can't all talk to me negatively about the city unless you want an argument of some sort. But if you all hadn't voted and supported us, because the big picture is for us to be the conduit for other things, it's not about us. It's about what can come through where we're going to be located to make a difference for this overall city. And so, I just want to thank you. I try to do it in council, but you're limited to those few minutes. And so I won't bore you now, but thank you for trusting us and allowing us to have funds that I think have put to good use. And we really made a difference to people that won't come and thank you. They so busy being happy and having a happy face and not having cold cheeks and one thing and another that they probably won't come to a meeting. But thank you for seeing us as an asset in this community, which we think we are, and not a liability, and will continue to be one. And then we were blessed to have the support to come along, because see, we're out of our lane. I'm a talker, but to have people that allowed us to come, and like Nancy and others and Brittany and all the people that have come and gone and we're not ashamed to say we don't know. I know what I know, and I'm not afraid to talk, but I need people that major in what they do. And God has allowed us to do that through the city. And we were here first. I don't care who shows up and tell you and try to impress you with they say. This is our 22nd year. We were here first. So, and then for us to have the funding to get Bobby and for him to bring the multifaceted self that he is, that will cover not just the average citizen, but veteran. It bleeds over flows over into the veterans community. He's been an asset to me over there for the privilege to be trusted by Habitat. I don't think it's jumping, but a privilege, okay? Don't tape it and don't chat it, okay? But since I'm the surrogate mom over there at the Veterans Community, to have Bobby as a resource, and he really helps me and backs up, helping me to help it across the community. So he's multifaceted, and we got a double barrel shotgun out of him, okay? And so he doesn't mind telling me things that we can do to help. That population is needy. And so we've been at the table at some strategic places, and we're making a difference because it's our assignment. It's our assignment, just like you guys got your assignment. And I just want to encourage you to disregard all the negativity and embrace all the positivity and go all in. Go all in 2022 and trust God to give you what to do for our city. And I say that to different ones when I get their ear, like the mayor, I run up on him, and the chief, and then some other people that I don't mind encouraging them. Even Buford lets me get all in his ear too. Yes, but to tell different ones, we appreciate you, because that's why I came to this meeting. And not that I don't think Rob Bobby knows what to say, but to support him because he is an asset for us, and we're going to continue to do our best. And thank you, each and every one of you. You know the role you play in helping us to do what we do, and it's just going to get better. We're going to have that corner just going to be popping. You hear me? Not the gunfire, Chief.
Thank you.
That didn't sound right, did it? With good things happening, not gunfire. We're going to make sure we pray at the ground so they'll avoid that area. But a great thing's going to happen, because we are talking to the college, and we talked to Dr. Ott, and it's not about us being a silo. We're going to be everything is needed to be. We want it to be high traffic, and that any and everybody that wants to come there will come there and never be the same. Okay, that's all I need to say.
Amen. You know what, though, that really, everything you just said is a two-way street. And, we all get in, there's not one person in this room that has probably gone for a year and a half without water running in their kitchen, right? That is something we do not understand. And so thank you guys for setting up a process to find those people. The one lady with the plumbing and the new faucet on top, that's $100 at Lowe's. And she's been living like that for how long? That's ridiculous. So thank y'all for finding and fixing, because that really means a lot. We get upset about the smallest things, but we don't go through a winter without heat. So, thank y'all very
And
much.
finding Bobby.
Yeah.
I don't know what you did, Nancy, but it's like,
Isn't he great?
There's a lot of bribery there because
I don't think from robbery.
I know how it works, man. I've got quite a few city council meetings.
Attorney's getting nervous.
Lobbying.
Get the right word.
Well, really.
I even think that one's I'm gonna go with admin.
All good stuff. from the citizens. Thank you all very much. All right, let's move on to the actual item number 3 on your agenda, which is to receive a presentation regarding neighborhood program. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, not a funeral.
Is Erin here?
She's
There she
here,
is.
ready.
Hi.
Thank you, everyone. I just wanted to talk about a little bit about this. If you all may remember, back in August of 2020, Buford and I put together a presentation for you all in which we talked about several different things. We went through the Code of Ordinances, both Chapter 21 and Chapter 40. Just a quick recap, Chapter 21 refers to our International Property Maintenance Code, as well as substandard structures and fences. Nuisances refers to parking on grass, junk and debris, things like that. We also went through the entire code compliance process at that meeting with you all and talked about what happens when a complaint's received and then an inspection occurs and what goes on from that point forward. Then we also did an overview of the code compliance process and some strategies that we're looking at, such as changing up the courtesy letter process, as well as some ordinance amendments. Went through a lot of our efforts as well through the Love Where You Live initiative, our neighborhood planning program, talked a little bit about what we include in all of our neighborhood plans. Of course, now we have 8 that have been approved. So you all are very familiar with those. But with that, also talked about a lot of the efforts, which you just saw what Bobby talked about. But in addition to that, all the efforts of the Housing Community Development Department, including the Housing Resource Center. We talked about some current strategies we're pursuing and then went over some regulatory options as well. Went through both a rental and vacant registration program, receivership, just a reminder, which that would be basically rehabilitating a dangerous structure. So you assign a receiver to take on that property when a property owner refuses to do so. Land banking, when a city acquires property for primary purpose of affordable housing. And then criminal nuisance abatement, which is shutting down properties that have habitual criminal activity. So then you all gave us some really valuable feedback, which Buford and I have been working on in the meantime. So basically what you asked us to do is to look at land banking in specific and provide some recommendations for a temple program. Also to look at Houston's active land bank program. We also were asked to look into a vacant and rental registration program, which Buford will present that portion for you today. An affordable rental housing incentive program, particularly matching grants that will be available to rental property owners. And then looking at criminal nuisance abatement, looking at that, doing some research and developing a process. So we'll go over those, what you all asked us to look at today. So I'll start with land banking. Just a quick overview of land banking. They can be used to transform vacant and abandoned properties into affordable housing and community assets. So basically, local governments acquire titles to these properties and redevelop them into affordable housing. This is allowed under Local Government Code, Chapter 379E, for municipalities to acquire properties. But in my research, I found that there are no cities in the state of Texas that utilize this program. Houston Land Bank, which started that way, is now actually a local government corporation that was created by the city of Houston. And they just help solve those issues with vacant, abandoned, deteriorated properties in communities throughout Houston. So they're not using any special provisions under Chapter 379. So just a little bit about their history. It started in 1999. They were organized. They had an initial project that they did with 120 lots. In 2003, they entered into an interlocal agreement with all the taxing entities so they could acquire any of those tax foreclosed properties and return them to use. They created a 13-member board of directors composed of the mayor, city council, Harris County representatives, as well as Houston ISD. And historically, they really focused on providing affordable housing, community gardens with lot sales. Now they're much bigger, and we'll talk a little about that. But it was in 2018 that they recertified themselves as a land bank to partner with the city. So as I said, they have a board with 13 members. They work closely with the city of Houston, the Houston Community Land Trust. I know some of you are familiar with Land Trust, but basically it's a nonprofit community-based organization that holds land permanently in a trust and primarily is used to make sure that there's long-term affordability in those areas. Then they also work with private and nonprofit developers. So they do a lot of different things, but they create affordable homes, they reactivate vacant, abandoned, damaged properties, and they utilize these funds to help pay for schools and city and county services, while at the same time keeping the taxes very low. Their objective is to make sure that they have affordable homes for low and moderate income home buyers. So what they do is they sell the property to builders and developers at a discount, and that encourages construction of new affordable homes for those qualified home buyers. And then in exchange for the property, the Houston Land Bank requires those home builders to sell them below a capped price to those income eligible home buyers. So I'm going to be going over the entire process with you, so feel free to stop me along the way. Then the approved home builders are eligible then to purchase lots at a discount from the fair market value. The sale of the lot is basically contingent on the lot's conditions. So are there, you look at soil conditions, drainage, topography, different things like that, and that would factor into the sale of the lot. Each of the approved home builders, once they're approved to be eligible under this program, then they submit a proposal for the lot they want to purchase. They have to submit a floor plan, exterior elevations, and specifications as it relates to materials. construction financing commitment, a timeline for the construction of the home, a proposed sale price, and then proof of ownership for the corporation. Then they're able to submit, the builders that are able to submit these proposals, they have it divided up amongst established builders, which the definition is very broad. It just says experienced builder, or a startup builder, which is essentially a builder that has experience with 3 or more projects that are in similar size and scope to what they're proposing. So they have several different rounds depending upon them. They are limited to the amount of lots they can get in each round, as well as the total number they can have at a time. So if you're an established builder, you can request to redevelop 12 lots, but you can have no more than 24 at a time. If you're a startup builder, then you can request 4 lots in a round, but you're not allowed to have more than 8 at a time. So then once they decide on the top 3 proposals, what they do is, and that's all determined by the lowest proposed bid, then those are reviewed by the Houston Land Bank staff, and they assign points through different categories. There's neighborhood design appropriateness, so whether it fits within the neighborhood. We talk about that a lot. So you have a lot of infill opportunities. Does that match the neighborhood character? And that's 20 points. You also have builder proximity consideration. They look at basically if the builder has other lots in this program that are within a half-mile radius. That's 5 points as well. And then you have home enhancements. So any features that would increase the quality of life of the home. So that's going beyond the minimum standards, for energy efficiency, any long-term maintenance, if they're going towards those things. That is 15 points. And then the proposed sale price that they have it is 5 points. And what they've also added is a track record. And they've added 5 points for that. And it's basically a demonstrated ability to advance the sale of the home to qualified home buyers. Then the top score is recommended to the Houston Land Bank for committee for approval. So once they're done there, they sign a contract, they pay their earnest money, and at closing, they record a forgivable deed. I have a couple examples of homes. I think these were built in 2020, so keep in mind the cost a little bit. But these are some examples of homes that were built through this program. This one had 180,000 sales price on a 5,000 square foot lot, a little over 1,400 square feet. This 2-story here, 153,000 on a 3,000 square foot lot, just under 1,300 square feet. And then this last one, 158,000. So you can see they're very affordable. The lots are small, but they're very consistent in building homes that will fit a number of individuals, such as families. So just the basic builder requirements, and I show here, these are, if you go onto their page, it's really neat. You can look and see all the different projects they can do, and it depends on if it's done, it will tell you if it's in development. And so then they also have some builder requirements and restrictions as well. So huge impact on the city of Houston. They have put $76 million in property back into the market. There are 520 properties in their inventory right now, 229 holding for that entity. And then they've also added $1 million to taxing entities in 2019. So then kind of thought I would bring it back a little bit. So talking about land banks still, that was something that you all asked us to look into, and that's just some information about Houston Land Bank, of course, which is a local government corporation. As y'all recall, you adopted a community development program back in September of last year. What we did within this program is that we identified program activities in 4 main areas. And I'm going to highlight land acquisition and disposition because this was the one that recommended the local government corporation. So and with that in September, you all also adopted a local government corporation that is allowed by the Texas Transportation Code and will allow us to acquire, hold, and convey real property in furtherance of our community development program goals. The bylaws for the TRC board have been adopted, and some things that we've done in the meantime since you all adopted that, the Secretary of State has accepted our certificate of formation. Some things that we're working on right now are obtaining an identification number. We're working on a funding administration agreement, funding that will be needed for the corporation this year and beyond. Identifying which staff will serve in the officer roles of president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer, as well as identifying properties that City of Temple owns that could be transferred to the TRC. So with that, I will hand it over to you.
Aaron,
Yes,
can I
ma'am.
ask you a question
Please.
before you turn it over?
Yes.
The prices, you showed 3 houses and the prices, those were the sale prices with the finished properties.
That's correct.
Those are not cheap in any way, shape, or form. So they're not serving the indigent.
The $158,000.
Right.
I believe they are compared to Houston.
Oh, well, no, I understand that.
It
But
would be much
Houston or
lower here.
Hong Kong, it's still, you're not indigent if you can buy a $158,000 house.
They, well, and it depends on the financing that they do and everything like
So
that. as
the
well.
land bank does the financing?
No.
No, you
Not
go
the-
through a normal lender?
Mhm. So I don't know that they have a financing program, but
Okay.
I think if I could, just before Buford goes on, so just to clarify, one of the things when we did the presentation back in late 2020, which was initiated by, I believe at that time it was a conversation between myself and Judy about what are our options, when we're talking about community development, what are we currently doing and what else could we add to our toolbox in order to continue our efforts there. So staff brought back an initial presentation with a lot of different options for us to consider. You all gave us some feedback on a few things. Again, one of them was a land bank. So based on our research, what our recommendation regarding land bank was to use a local government corporation to achieve that purpose. And we have set that up and are beginning to work in that direction. So I'm going to check that one off the list. And then now we turn, not in terms of being complete, but that we've started the process towards that solution. And then the next couple of things that we talked about that you wanted some more information and for us to do a deeper dive on is potentially a rental registration or a vacant home registration program. So we've done that research, and this is now Buford's presentation on what we found and what we're recommending in terms of what to implement or if to implement something regarding these two programs based on our research.
May I ask Aaron a question?
Yes.
The list of things that you showed at the end, the things that need to be done, the employer identification number, et cetera.
Yes.
What's the time frame for getting those done?
Well, right now we are working on the funding and administration agreement. So once we have that, we'll be ready to schedule the first board meeting with you all.
In the next 3 months, 6 months, or?
I am very hopeful it is in the next 2 to 3 months.
I would
say
say
definitely
2 months or so.
Okay, thank you.
So once again, I think I was sick at the meeting that it was, you took over everything.
I didn't say that.
Well, I didn't do the presentation in August of 2020. I was ill. I was supposed to, but nonetheless, one of the things that came out of it was y'all asked for us to take a look at rental and vacant house registration program. So we looked into it. That's what that first point says. And one of the things that we got from council was that the program should be focused on properties with that we're having issues with, code violations, versus all rental and vacant properties. There was concern, why would you put good renters or good landlords through a process that they don't deserve? And the goal would be to bring properties that are out of compliance up to basic property code standards. And what did we want internally? What would code like for the program to help us do? Would be to give the city a process to identify and locate owners and tenants, allow city to know who should actually be in the property. Code compliance does not have the legal ability to go knock on a door and ask for a driver's license. So a lot of times we're guessing if people should be there at all. We wanted access to the interior of the structure. Outside might look okay, but the inside might be out of compliance or substandard. And then allow substandard conditions to be identified and addressed before they become too cost prohibitive, meaning the longer it goes on, the more expensive it's going to be. And then the only option that makes any sense is to tear a house down. Maybe we could save some of these houses. And then allow city staff to identify and address dangerous violations more quickly. So that means once a house is gone or it's at a dangerous point, we want to be able to address it more quickly than currently have. So this is a part I don't like. Oh no, there's one more slide and then we'll get to that part. What we found in other cities' programs is that most of the existing programs that I found use rental registration to disallow rentals without registration. So the process was not to say, hey, this is rental. The council literally would not allow you to rent a house unless it was registered. So that applied to all rentals, not just substandard rentals. That's the second point. These programs are often used in cities with universities or large attractions, so Airbnb stuff or student housing. So you have a more, I guess transient would be the word, kind of population going through these houses, which in turn could lead to less property maintenance. And then many of the programs charge fees either yearly or both yearly and upon initial registration, which I wasn't sure that I felt like council did not want to do that. And what we found, and this part we don't like, all the programs we looked at did not give us a way to identify owners if they did not register. So Brent brought up the point that there are people out there who the owner of the house died. They did not probate the will. We don't know who owns it. And this program would not tell us who the owner is, who's in charge of that house right now. The program would not give us a way to identify tenants if they do not register. I still would not. If you don't register, I don't know. I don't have the power to demand some form of a rental agreement or something. And the program would not give us access to the interior of the structure. I can't legally figure out how to do that just because of a rental registration program. Our concerns from that is that a rental registration program would allow us to write complaints for rentals that are not registered. And actually, when I was presenting this to Bren some months ago, I had a little difficulty getting my head wrapped around the difference between code issues and rental registration issues. They're two different problems. All of a sudden, code compliance is dealing with registration issues, not substandard housing issues. So as opposed to going after people because they have substandard houses, we're going after, and that's a horrible term, I used it with Councilmember Walker earlier, as opposed to addressing issues because of substandard housing, we're addressing issues because you're not registering. Well, that's not what we're trying to solve here. We're trying to solve substandard housing issues. And we can already write complaints for those properties. And if you have a substandard housing, you may just not register it. So I already addressed the second point there. And long story short, we'd just be adding more codes to our codes here in the city, and it wouldn't help us address substandard housing. I don't know that I'm making myself clear. Am I? Okay.
Yes.
Aaron gave me a thumbs up, so I'll take it.
Essentially, we feel like we already have the tools in our toolbox that we need to go after the root issue, and that a rental registration program would not materially add anything of benefit for us and would add a layer of regulation and work just to manage the rental registration program, both for the city and the property owner. And when you just do what is the benefit of the program versus the cost of resources or time, and it just, at least staff's recommendation is that there isn't a value there right now that we feel like we don't already have a tool to address with, and that this program would particularly be helpful. Someone who's not following the code is not likely to register their property. Thus, you would just be, instead of focusing on going after the substandard structure, to use your word, and addressing the substandard structure, you would just be layering on trying to get a person to register when you could have just headed to the root problem in the first place.
Yeah, they're already breaking code by having a substandard structure. Why just give them another code to break?
It doesn't matter whether it's a rental or a owner occupied, it's substandard.
That's correct. Yeah, if it is substandard, it's substandard by definition. Yes, ma'am. So what are we doing? So this whole process has actually allowed us to come up with some solutions. And we feel pretty good about this. So code is focusing on all structures rather than just rental or, registration structures. We are continuing our structure grading process with the neighborhood planning effort. So for every neighborhood planning district, the Transform Temple team drives through and gives every property in the district, every structure, a grade of A through F. A meaning it's gorgeous, we can't recommend anything. F meaning it should have been torn down yesterday. And we use that grading to focus our inspections, our drive around inspections, and look at those houses. So we've narrowed 500 houses down to 5 houses that we see that are issues. We get from the UBO, Utility Business Office, a weekly report of shutoffs. So working with Housing and Community Development, which is Nancy's team, all the houses are then inspected. So if we see, we get a list of shutoffs, then we go back and look at those grades that we have given them earlier. And if they fall in a D or F, we go back. And so if utilities, the water shut off, you're assuming that the house is empty, and then we're able to red tag those houses, which keeps people from living in them, which is the first step. We don't want people living in substandard structures. Make sense?
That you've only determined they're substandard from the outside.
That's right. Now, once we determine that they're substandard from the outside, we can get a warrant to enter the property theoretically. So we can take that proof to our local judge, to our municipal court, to get the looky-loo warrant, to just go in and look.
And again, the rental registration program wouldn't add any additional authority for us to be inside without permission or a warrant. So we can do the same thing with a rental, without a rental registration program in that aspect that we can with it. Just requiring a registration, we have no authority to force ourselves into the home.
We have started taking
So,
sorry. Yes, sir.
So real registration, you inspect, you do an outside inspection, right, driving around, however, you give them a grade. They're seen as a D or F.
That's separate from rental registration. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Right, I understand that. Where your rental registration is off the table. What I'm asking is, so you drive around without a rental registration, you don't know if that home's rental or an owner occupied.
I can probably find out, but I don't necessarily know driving down.
So in all, we started with rental registration, but now we're talking about possibly catching everything in the net, so to speak.
And that's
owner
correct.
occupied.
That's correct.
Or rental versus non-rental.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Just the whole Megillah, everything in the neighborhood gets graded. And that happened, we started that with the neighborhood planning district process, because that was one of the things that we're tracking in our neighborhood plans. And then, of course, like the fool I am sometimes, it took me a little while. And I was like, wait a second, we have this information. We're doing it already. I just didn't take that and apply it to actual use on the ground. And now we are.
So there's a water cutoff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, is it the city that's instigating that, or maybe it's a move out?
These are volunteer. So if the city instigates it, you assume somebody's still living there because they didn't pay their bill.
And then you come knocking on their door saying we have a warrant to inspect.
No, not on those necessarily. We're just addressing the ones that are empty. So these are voluntary shut-offs.
He's using the utility report to get an idea of vacancy status for the home. So if you've got a structure that's occupied and they've identified it through their neighborhood planning survey that it's potentially substandard, then we we want to take the opportunity when that structure becomes vacant to prevent it from being reoccupied if possible,
Sure.
if it is unsafe. So he's using that list to help narrow, he's using the survey, the neighborhood planning physical survey they do of the property and that list to help focus our limited resources on which houses should be re-inspected to determine if they are vacant and should be red tagged to prevent future occupancy.
And so you're assuming that with an involuntary cutoff, like you said, there's very possibly somebody still there, may or may not be owner occupied. But if it's an involuntary cutoff, then this red tag process won't happen?
That's correct.
Okay.
They're just not getting that report because the report they're getting is trying
Voluntary only, okay.
to focus in
Yeah.
on what's likely to be a vacated.
That could be a next step. We're just not doing it right.
My concern is that someone shows up with a warrant with someone living there.
Okay, so we do, red tagging doesn't necessarily mean a warrant. So we're not actually.
No, I understand. I
Oh,
understand
okay.
that. I understand that.
We go to the house and make sure it is not occupied. If it is occupied, we address it in a different manner. If it is not occupied, we're going to red tag it so nobody else can move in. We are very concerned about calling a house, about getting people kicked out of houses. That is not our goal. Our goal is to get houses brought up to a livable standard.
And a service of like getting an administrative warrant is one of the last steps in a
Sure.
process where we
Yeah.
actively been engaging with the property owner
That's right.
and are concerned about the safety of, and haven't been able to work voluntarily with anyone. So it's not, we're not, I don't know, that doesn't happen very often. And it's used with discretion when we feel like it's one of the only options left to move forward and there's some type of safety concern to be addressed.
And 9 times out of 10, I would guess that this is going to work exactly like you want it to. Right? That you possibly substandard. The place is probably empty, et cetera.
That's correct. Yes, sir. We've been doing it for 6 months, maybe 8 months. Average of one house red tagged a week, which means it can no longer be occupied. And we maybe in that time have found one of those that there were actually people living in. Now, it might have been also somebody moved out, but then moved back in. They had a new tenant in there before we could get there. So average of one a week is not bad. And just to be clear, this is just the first step. We're red tagging the house. The primary goal is to keep people out of substandard houses. There are many other steps that need to happen after that, but keeping people out of those homes is the first thing we have to do.
Well, it's obviously a fire hazard if there are people in there, if they're squatting or in there without utilities.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, and it happens inevitably,
Absolutely.
but 2 or 3 houses a year here are burned down
Right.
because somebody is doing something unsafe. So some of the other issues or some of the other things we've done is we've started taking lesser property violations to our municipal court, such as, so if you have a junk and debris or an ongoing junk and debris issue or a normal code issue, we take it to municipal court where it's either goes to a trial or they plead guilty or whatever. We can take smaller substandard housing issues to the municipal court. We continue to take our larger property violations to Building and Standards Commission, where they can either fine or demand that the structure be fixed or call for a demolition. And then finally, once again, Nancy's team has started their rental reinvestment program. And that's still pretty new, but we're trying to work what we have in with what they have. Assuming that somebody has a rental property, they want to make money off that rental property. Once I red tag it, once my team red tags it, they can no longer make money off of that. So we're hoping that is a stick that will cause them to fix it up. And we're also, as we like to do, trying to offer, Nancy's team is trying to offer help with investing into that property to bring it back up to above HUD standards. So all of a sudden we have a safe rental property. Maybe the last slide. I feel like I'm mumbling a lot.
Oh, it's my turn.
It's Aaron's turn again. Are there any other questions? I felt like I mumbled a lot there, but it kind of, Brent, I think I got confused again like I did.
No, you're good. So just to recap, we looked at the rental registration, the vacant property registration program. At this time, staff's recommendation is that we don't pursue those programs because we feel like we've got the tools in our toolbox we need already, and that wouldn't add any value to us at this time. So that's our recommendation.
And we've added, just to hop onto that, and thank you, Brenda. Some of these things we were not doing, many of these things we were not doing 2 years ago. We weren't grading properties. We weren't red tagging properties. We weren't getting information from UBO. So we have added extra steps there to try to address some of these issues that we hadn't 2 years ago or in August of 2020. Aaron's turn.
Thank you. Another thing that you asked us all to look into was a grant program with matching grants. As a part of the community development program, 2 of those areas recommended a residential and commercial grant program. That is something that we are looking to right now. So we heard you, and then what we did was we developed the community development program, and then within that we had some goals as it related to residential and commercial structures. So we have some recommendations. We're working on a policy for this. And so here are some initial thoughts of what we were thinking. What we're doing is, as we complete each of the neighborhood planning districts, we're putting together a grant program based on the recommendations within that district. Worked very closely with Buford, Nancy, and Brian Chandler on this, and we set it up very similarly to the CIS program. So what you have is we've identified by infill and new development in both commercial and residential. That has a lower match than the redevelopment portion, because the redevelopment portion is the idea that that could be somebody coming in to redevelop, but it could also be a homeowner who can't afford to make some upgrades to their property. And so that higher match amount will provide them with a little bit more funding. Still putting a maximum grant amount on it, so our money goes a lot further and we can help as many people as possible. But essentially, this is what we're thinking about to date. So hopefully we'll be bringing that to you all with some, proposals in the next few months. And so we hope that that would address your request to look at a matching grant program for residential properties. As far as property nuisance abatement, this is something that you also asked us to look into. What we are recommending, looking into that, is creating a multi-department task force team, which we would like to call the Temple Nuisance Abatement Team. Remember, those other cities out there had some really cool things. So we're calling it TNAT. I attribute that to Chief Reynolds. I think he came up with this name. Thanks, Chief.
Silent, because our logo could be a net,
Which is a new sound. So
They are.
Heather will probably reject my idea.
That was pretty funny, actually. We could just take T off of it and next.
Yeah.
So
The T is silent, the T can be silent.
Yes, but then the team
That's not how that
becomes
works.
the-
yes, I'm sorry. I'm gonna bring y'all back in. Gloria does this in meetings with us all the time. She brings us back in. So I'm gonna try to be Gloria. So what we want to do is have a team composed of city attorney's office, police, fire, transform temple, and planning and development services. So basically, they come together, they identify any properties that are a nuisance, and then they look at ways that they can address those nuisance conditions. So what they'll do is they will have an investigation and case evaluation to look at several different things. It could be crime trends at the property. Is it owner occupied? Is it vacant? Is it abandoned? What proximity is it to residential neighborhoods? Does it have severe fire and code issues? So here's an example that you all may be well aware of, where we basically had this process. We received a citizen complaint for this property on South Fifth Street. And so what the city departments did is they came together to discuss the property with the city manager. That included transportation planning, PD, fire, amongst many other departments. What they found when they inspected that property is that there were substantial fire and code issues. So then what they did was they found the property owner, they coordinated with the property owner to address those issues. A little bit that's happened since then is that the property owner did not correct the issues after 10 months. So basically they were cited for the offenses and the violations were sent to municipal court. The owner pleaded no contest on 15 separate violations. There were actually 5 violations at 3 occasions. That's why it came up with the 15. And then the tenants were removed from the building so the owner could address the building code issues. So currently the owner does have a building permit to address these issues. It did expire, however, they have extended the permit through July.
It burned.
But they've done nothing but
They
take a
caught fire.
permit.
No, they've been working on
They've
it,
been
like in the
working.
last couple of days or years.
No, I think it's got an open roof on it. If that's the house I'm thinking of, it's got an open.
They're
roof
working on the
Yeah.
roof right now.
It had an old fire.
After a fire?
There was a fire, that's part of the process we're all going
Really?
through. Yeah,
They rebuilt over the.
that's what we found with.
All the beams in there. Go ahead.
They were just tearing the roof off.
I do want to highlight that while this isn't, this problem is not solved by any stretch of the imagination, and Judy, and I see you like staring at me. But I want to highlight that before we engaged with this property, there were people living in this structure in danger because of how because of the fire damage, because of the
Everything.
electrical code violation. I mean, there was
Everything.
just a ton. And so we have achieved a victory. While we're not done with this process, that no one is living here. So we have gotten to a place where at least, while we haven't addressed the nuisance for the neighborhood, we have at least made progress to secure the safety of what were the former tenants of the property. So I know this one's still a work in progress, but I want to celebrate the wins where we have them.
Where does the owner live?
They're local. They may not be
I
within
want the
the
street
city.
address.
Yeah. I can get it.
They don't live on site. They don't live on site.
They are local. They have several rental properties. I don't think they live in town, but in
But they
surrounding.
do live in the general vicinity.
Oh, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Well, they should be paid a personal visit.
We've spoken to them many times in our office.
I'm not talking about.
Oh, you mean with baseball bat?
That's what I meant.
Next time, you're not.
Oh, sorry, I forgot.
No, you did not hear the last conference.
I forgot legal was here. I apologize. I think baseball bat got held.
Bribery investigation.
Been a busy day.
All right, Aaron, let's move on.
Yes, sorry. So, TNAT or NAT goals, it would be to identify those nuisance properties that are adversely affecting our general public or the inhabitants in that structure. It would allow us to have some ongoing communication with the property owners to address those issues. Also identify measures to improve the conditions of the property. Then we would work closely with the property owners to ensure those properties remain in good condition. So hopefully we're getting there with that example. As well as preserve a lot of existing buildings and reduce the overall number of demolitions. One thing that Buford talked to you all about is when he grades, he goes from A to F. F means the structure is beyond repair. So if we, that's a part of our grading process as well. If we can get to when it's a C or D, there is still an opportunity for us to save that structure versus demolition.
And that's really important for the one you're talking about on Fifth Street, because it's got great potential.
It's a beautiful
pretty
building. It really is.
It could be.
It could be. That's right. It has I see a lot of beauty in
Yes,
buildings
I
like that.
agree with you.
So just our basic process, I talked about it a little bit, but so basically these departments would come together, representatives from each department would come together and they would have a list of nuisance properties. Then the teams would then leave the meeting and they would each go through and research. So if you're a police officer, then you would look at, are there any arrests there? Were there any calls? Things like that. Fire would look at fire reports. Buford would look at code issues. Then they come back together and they provide all the information together. And they would identify which properties are in need of an inspection and investigation. So they would schedule that, and then they would complete an inspection investigation, any of the departments needed. What they would do then afterward is they would review the results of the inspection. and identify what measures are needed to bring the property back to compliance, like we did with the property on South Fifth. And then our city attorney will review it for any legal course of action if needed. The property owner would be notified by letter to meet with our city attorney, as well as any associated team members. We would hold a meeting with them, and the meeting results, hopefully, would be voluntary compliance, where the property owner would have an action plan that they would follow, and then once complete with those improvements, they would have an inspection. However, in the worst case scenario, if they refuse to comply, then we would need to pursue any legal remedies. So,
Is Charlotte, are you the attorney that, from the city that you would be meeting, that they would be meeting with?
I don't think we've decided yet
Yeah,
who all is gonna be making up the team.
right, yep. Just generally speaking, we wanted to, we know that you all asked us to look into criminal nuisance abatement specifically, but we felt like that went beyond that. We felt like property nuisance abatement is really something that goes along with that, that we wanted to address. And this is our proposal for how to address any property nuisance. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the enforcement options that we have for these nuisances. So you have 3 different areas, and I'll go through those in depth: code enforcement, civil enforcement, and AG enforcement. So code enforcement, you can have a code compliance case that's open for any violation for municipal ordinance that we've talked about before, our UDC, Chapter 7, 21, and 40. Then the code case can be resolved either through voluntary compliance, which is always our goal, or it could result in criminal enforcement through our municipal court. Then you also have civil enforcement, which is the quasi-judicial enforcement that we do through the Building and Standards Commission. So that local government code, section 54, enforcement of municipal ordinances, allows for us to do that type of enforcement. And these are some examples of things that we can address to the efforts, whether it's fire safety of the building, a dangerous building, any conditions, animal care, different factors such as that. We can also do this through Chapter 214, the Municipal Regulation of Housing and Other Structures. What we would do is we would do a Chapter 54 lawsuit. So basically, if it was in this case, we may bring civil action to the enforcement of that ordinance related on to several of these different items here. I'm not going to go through them all because I know I've been talking a long time, but you can see they're very similar. So then what would happen is the suit would be given in a preferential setting. And the result of the suit is that the defendant would be ordered to stop violating the ordinance, prohibited from any conduct that violates the ordinance. Any civil penalties would be awarded, and then the city would be able to bring action against Chapter 54 to require the repair or demolition of the structure. Attorney General enforcement, which is kind of your criminal nuisance part of it. So we have the ability to, through the Texas Nuisance Abatement Statutes, Chapter 125 of the Texas Civil Practice and Remedies Code, and Section 101 of the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Code. This provides us that tool that we talked about very early on back in August to shut down properties that have ongoing habitual criminal activity. Basically, we would work collectively with the Attorney General's office to bring a suit forward. Then the court would be able to order the owner to eliminate that criminal activity and shut down the property. So the Chapter 125 is really utilized for violations of state law and crimes. It allows our police department to target any habitual criminal or gang activity at problem properties. Then the Attorney General's office really does the heavy lifting. They do the work. They provide assistance in targeting, processing, filing suit. But there's some things that we need to show the Attorney General in order to get that moving. We have to show that the property owner has violated, has allowed that illegal, they basically knew the illegal activity was going on. They allowed that to occur, or they took any reasonable steps to stop it. Also, we'll need to provide any evidence of arrest reports, calls for service, search warrants and things like that. So we have ability to do that now, right? Here are some just offenses that are listed in the Texas Civil Practice and Remedies Code. as it relates to habitual criminal activities such as gambling, robbery, things like that. So that we can do that now if we need to. We have that at our disposal that we can do that. So with all this being said, the things that you asked us to look into, just to kind of bring it all back, here are our recommendations. You asked us to look into a land bank. What we recommend is the implementation of our Temple Revitalization Corporation will help us achieve that land bank goal. We do not recommend moving forward with the rental and vacant registration program because as Buford and Bryn talked about, it really wouldn't provide us with the benefits we thought it would. And there are other things that his team is doing and will be doing in order to be successful in that area. You asked us to look into a grant program. We are currently doing that, and we'll be bringing something forward to you all, which would be a matching grant program. And then also looking into not just criminal nuisance, but property nuisance, creating our property nuisance abatement team. All right. Happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, Aaron, one real quick question on the
Yes.
nuisance abatement. That is
Yes.
residential and commercial properties?
Yes. All properties.
You're only missing the baseball brigade.
So as you can see, we were at work since August of 2020.
That's a lot. I can't even absorb everything. There's other little things I'm wondering about it to protect the neighborhood, especially the older neighborhood. So maybe I'll get with you later and break that down and then we can discuss it more, see if that's included.
Most definitely. We can always do more and be better. That's for sure.
Thank you, Aaron. Item number 5 is to receive a presentation regarding the first quarter financial results for fiscal year 2022.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I am, I'd back up a second. This is the time of the year when we're dealing with 3 fiscal years. We're finalizing the audit for the fiscal year 2021. We're in fiscal year 22 and we're beginning to plan for fiscal year 2023. So we got a lot of things going on here. And later tonight, you'll actually hear the audited financial statement presentation from Christine Wells with Steve Niemeyer's office. But this is first quarter financials for the 3 months ended 12/31/2021. Looking at each fund, looking at total revenues, general fund percent of budget, we're 25% of the year complete, but we're close to 37% of budget. That has to do with the collection of our property taxes in the first quarter of the year. Water and sewer fund, we're at 22.7. Again, higher consumption is in the summer months. Hotel motel fund, our hotel and motel receipts have recovered very well, the pre-pandemic level. We're at 33.32%. Drainage fund, we're right very close to 25%. Some revenue highlights. I wanted to check out the sales tax. I think y'all have been seeing that monthly, the DEI reports. And this actually goes 4 months, the end of January. The line is all cities in the state of Texas. The red is Temple, and then it's sorted in descending order. Far left, city of Waco shows us comparing to the prior 4 months of last year, we're close to 20% increase. Just amazing.
So this is increases.
Yes, ma'am.
This number shows an increase. So Waco had,
increase, yes.
okay, so Waco had 20+% increase over last year.
Over 20%.
We had 21. Oh, right. I got it. Okay.
City of Temple's right below 20.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
When you look at 4 months.
You're right.
And just, I wanted to show this chart. This is looking, it's not confidential information. It's by market segment. And it compares the 12 months per calendar year 21 to calendar year 20. And it shows the change increase. So note you have your dollars and then it computes the increase. The top category is not provided. Don't know really what it is. But looking, and I won't read them all, but the increases in sales tax are for that calendar year compared to 20 calendar year. You can read down the side there.
In those categories.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's just Temple.
Just Temple.
In every category is a hit.
Yes. Not every, and the next, when you, again, I don't want to read all of that. Remember what
But that's not
2020
the
was?
increase, that's total dollars.
No, that's a
What is
percent increase,
Percentage,
dollars increase and percent increase.
Both.
they're all positive.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I picked the top 12.
Okay.
And then I went to the bottom
There's
of the.
more, that's not on this,
Oh,
that are,
no,
that are.
Yeah. There's like 600 of them. It shows five. It's dollar, it goes from the change, the increase, biggest increase to the biggest decrease. So I went to the bottom of the spreadsheet. And these are the areas that in that period saw loss. Less in 2021 than 2020. I was showing this to our auditors and I think, I don't know if it got on this one or not. It might have been.
That beer, wine, and liquor, you think that would
But 2020 pandemic was high, so it's, yeah, I was gonna show
That's because
you.
people still had supplies because they bought such a big supply and the household appliances, you're sitting on.
You can't find one.
boats out in the ocean, they can't get here during that period.
So I just wanted to share that on some of our sales tax. Additional revenue highlight, ad valorem taxes, we're right in line where we should be on collections as of December 31. Expenditure, the general fund, we're at 24.62% of budget, water sewer fund at 25%, hotel motel at 22.35%, and drainage fund. We have some capital projects funded that make up a good bit of that haven't been encumbered or a contract issued on those. Just looking, this is first quarter of the year, early in the year, things we'll monitor. Still with recreational fees and events, they're not picking back up to what they were. Fines and fees, Chief's getting his staff back rolling. And you're looking at, it's just those numbers are down. Mayburn Center, the hotel motel tax, hotels have recovered and doing well, but the rentals at the Mayburn Center are still low.
I think I may be misstating. Is Richard still here? No. I think at the last Parks Board meeting, they announced that the Mayburn Center was rented every weekend through for the rest of the year.
Well, that's good. So that we'll see that. Yeah.
That's true.
Good.
We'll see that pick back up.
Yes, indeed.
Which is good. On the expenditure side, we are seeing some just nature of the business, I think. Some fleet repairs, major. We got a pretty big fleet in the solid waste vehicles, but we're looking into that. And then we've experienced, as we all have personally, fuel prices were low and now they're starting to creep back up. So we'll have to watch that. Investments, we're sitting at 12/31. We're at $340.8 million invested. Most of that's in government pools. We do have some CDs and then some little over 10% in cash. Rates are, you're starting to see the yield curve move further out with the indication that rates are more than likely going to start ticking up. They've been like, well, not very, 2.5%. They did get close to that in 2019, but fell and down to practically zero today. And that's, we're earning 0.06% on our portfolio, right in line with our average. Our benchmark a year ago, we were earning little over 0.5%. Capital improvement program, we're sitting right now at $454.4 million of projects underway or planned or in the design phase. This is by funding source. The reinvestment zone is the top funding source, and then we go to utility revenue bonds, and our combination tax and revenue bonds. This shows the status based on dollars, 42% of engineering, 40% under construction or in progress. A little over 9% in the planning phase and a little over 7% complete. Strategic investment zones we set today are as of 12/31. We were setting at $554,000 in that fund, and there are three grants that 2 of those will be coming to you, I think, on March 3rd, and the others administrative review and approval. But that would bring that balance down to about $345,000. And that completes the first quarter financials.
Thank you. All looks good. Again, that's nice. Council, any questions? Any questions for Tracy before we move into executive session?
Can you run to the restroom?
While I read? Yep. All right. At this time, the council will enter into executive session, discuss the following. The time is 4:10 p.m. We'll receive and discuss a briefing regarding certain economic development prospects and potential real property acquisitions or sales pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.072 and 087. Council may meet in closed session to discuss or deliberate purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if deliberation in an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the position of the governmental body in negotiations with a third person. Discuss or deliberate commercial or financial information received from a business prospect that the governmental body seeks to have locate, stay, or expand in or near the city of Temple, and with which the governmental body is conducting economic development negotiations, or to deliberate the offer of a financial or other incentive to such a business project. No final action will be taken.